theory. I've lived it in the mud, the chaos, and the moments nobody writes about. This show is the truth, raw, unfiltered, and built for leaders who actually give a damn. If you're ready to grow, ready to own your own story, and ready to lead from the front, you're in the right place. Speak up, show up, lead. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Hi, I'm JJ Hardy. Welcome to another episode of Speak Up, Show Up, Lead. This is a Leadership Live edition. So we have Chris Pienkowski, my co-host here. And today we're going to talk about something kind of cool. But otherwise, let's get into the introductions first. Chris, how you doing today, buddy?
Doing great, JJ. How are you?
Well, coffee in hand. Life can't get too much better.
There you go.
Plus, I'm having a great conversation with the guy that I've been doing these freaking shows with for how long we've been doing it. It's been like 2.5 years now, I think.
Yeah, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, my goodness. I don't even know. I should probably figure out what Leadership Live episode this actually is and figure out how many we've actually done.
Yeah.
But no, today we're talking about a pretty cool topic. Last time we went into leading with influence.
Mm-hmm.
Today we're going to do something a lot of people don't even know you can do. And it's using influence, but we're going to be a little bit more specific about it. And that's leading up and down the chain of command. And somebody who's served we both have pretty much served at almost every capacity within an organization. I'd like your opinion because you're currently doing it. I've just been coaching for 4 years. So what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, leading up the chain is such an important skill. And it's also something that I think a lot of people overlook, whether it's because they have this preconceived notion that, hey, maybe the guy above me is smarter. He's been around the block longer. He's seen more things. So therefore, he deserves to be in his seat and lead down, as opposed to, the different line of thinking is, hey, I have this frontline knowledge, and me being able to share that knowledge up the chain actually helps us here on the shop floor, right? Let's just use a shop floor for an example. But when management understands what we're facing down here, and I can deliver that message in a way that has some influence. So back to our last episode about leading with influence, but also comes across in a way of, I'm not complaining about things, but what I'm really doing is trying to kind of open your eyes to what's going on so that we can be a better, higher performing organization. I think it's overlooked a lot. I think that more leaders would like that interaction, if I'm being honest. And I think a lot of times it is the guys on the front lines who don't feel like they should or could be kind of leading up the chain. And it really comes down to getting on the same page with that leader, and then, for lack of a better word, giving you the authority to, lead up. And once someone unlocks that in their mind, then you see how it happens on a regular basis. And it's so powerful. Like, we need that kind of insight from the front lines.
Yeah. The first word, based off of what you just got done saying, the first word that comes to mind is actually ownership and self-leadership. Because as you start moving through the ranks and you're no longer the execution employee, if you want to create that up and down level of influence and lead people, whether it's above you, on the same level as you or below you, it really involves you owning everything within your sphere of influence and not making excuses, not saying no all the time when things come down the chain of command, which that tends to happen once people get overwhelmed, they lose their credibility. But it also, you can't be passing blame anymore. It comes time for you to just, whenever a problem comes down to you, hey, Chris, that thing that we were supposed to be working on last week didn't get completed exactly on time, and there were all kinds of issues. Instead of being that guy that says, oh yeah, Joe Snuffy down there did blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing, looking them right in the face and saying, hey, you know what, my bad. We had some hiccups. We're working through some things. It did get done. I should have probably kept in better communication with you, whatever the case may be for whatever situation you're dealing with. But if you want to lead up the chain of command, it involves a different level of personal responsibility and self accountability to be able to make that happen. So that's ownership, kind of defined right there when in your role. But when you have people working for you and you're working for somebody else and you want people to take you serious that are at your level, it involves all of it. That's really the basics of it all.
Yeah. And, another component is asking the right questions and good questions. It's being curious, because I'll take it from my perspective, right? I'm sitting in a leadership role, and if I've got guys or women below me in the chain of command, and I'm sharing with them, hey, these are the things that we need to be doing. This is my intent. This is where we're going. The ones who are asking meaningful and curious questions says to me, all right, they really want to understand this. They're taking their level of ownership and accountability to the next level so that they can execute. And when those curious question askers, if that's a word, those are the people that get more of my attention when they come back to me and say, hey, Chris, I thought about this and I understand that this is our end goal. This is what we talked about. But after kind of thinking about it and how we have our production on the shop floor or how we do things, I think it would actually be more efficient to do ACB as opposed to ABC. I am more likely to take their advice on that, not just because they're on the front lines, but because they have paid attention and asked the right questions to understand. Because now I know that what they're bringing back to me is grounded a lot more in achieving the shared goals that we have as a team.
Right. Well, and gosh, questions. We could have an entire podcast about questions, how important they are. Yep. I mean, Simon Sinek, John Maxwell, so many people have written books about why questions are so important. And, you're right. Because if you're always just throwing solutions at people, they have to execute what you want to do. Right. But when you ask those leading questions, you allow them to come up with their own solution, and you create a certain level of growth. And actually that creates credibility because people appreciate that. They don't want stuff shoved down their throat. They want to be able to do the job. I mean, that's what they were hired to do. So that's from the leading below you. That's the most important thing. But also, when your boss comes to you and he has an issue with something you have going on, you can use questions then too. Hey, what about that didn't you like? In your opinion, what could I have done differently? Because, me and my team, we're just pigeonholed and we're just doing what we got to do every day. And, an outsider's perspective would be appreciated. But questions definitely mean something. But, we've done a lot of up and down. But let's look at your peers, because your peers are extremely important in this too. Up and down in the chain of command is not just who you work for and who works for you. It's also those people that are supporting you and you work with on a daily basis that are doing things that are maybe not the same, but you're at a similar level. Leverage each other. And if you want to create an overall 360 better picture at work, you're going to have everybody's buy-in. And the way to do that is to help other people out, not just the people that you work directly for and that work for you. And those peers are probably going to be your biggest allies in a lot of ways, because if you need help getting things done and they can They can send somebody over your way and help with an initiative, or you can send somebody over their way and help them with an initiative, or just sit there and help them plan something that they've just been stumped on, or just talk through it. My goodness, that's also another way to create that 360 influence that you need to lead up and down the chain of command.
Yeah, and let's take that a step further. So when you build relationships with your peers, not only are you creating that support system, right? Where you're helping them, they're helping you, but you're also building this knowledge of each other. You're seeing how each other works under pressure and how you deal with certain things. And as your careers move on, I mean, hey, is there a chance that one of your peers gets promoted before you? Quite possibly. So then do you have a better chance of leading up the chain if someone that you've spent time building a relationship as a peer? Yes, 100%. But then on the flip side, let's say you get promoted before that peer, but now you have this relationship. You know how that person works. So when that person comes to you to lead up the chain, you're like, got it. Okay. You know what's going on here. Your plan is 95% of what I would have come up with in the first place. So rock and roll, take ownership of it. So it's that relationship building at the peer level that is so important because you don't know where the future is going to go. And relationships are the foundation of everything.
So when I was in the military and I went to warrant officer school, I was part of a small team of people, and I worked for some senior people, and I had people work for me. But then when I came back, my position kind of changed until I left to go to my next unit because obviously I boosted myself up in rank and I was at a different pay grade and everything else. But I was teaching a class on something that I learned while I was in my not my basic course, my advanced course, learning, the actual skills that I would do for my job, not just as a warrant officer. And the guy that was the guy that I was working for before I left to go to school, which I didn't work for him anymore, he stopped and he's like, "What an amazing opportunity to share something with all of you." And I was like, okay, well, this guy doesn't talk much, so this has got to be good. And he said, Chief is a good guy. He was referring to me. That's what you call a warrant officer in the military. They call him chief. But, this is the perfect example of why you always treat people well. I was like, what the heck is this guy talking about? He's like, this guy worked for me 4 months ago. Now he's back here and he's in a position where I could be working for him. This is why you treat people well. And it was a leadership class I was teaching. So, I mean, it was appropriate, but who knows what this guy was going to say. But what an amazing point to bring up of why you should be treating people. And it's that's a very selfish way of looking at it, but it's also a motivator. And, people need that motivation and sometimes a little bit different types of reassurance because you just never know. One day you could treat somebody horrible and then need them the next day. That is so very, very true. Oh, but 100%. On the other side of that, let's look at things from a servant leader perspective, because I believe that when you go to work for a company, or if you own a company and you have a bunch of people working for you, if you are the type of guy who lives in your ego and you want to just play puppet master and control everything, but not allowing people to do this stuff the way they would do it, but you think you have to control every move or dictate how things will be done, or even with your peers, look at them and say, you're doing that wrong, I would do it this way. Or, I mean, I've even heard people say that to their boss before, which was kind of weird. But I've heard it. What type of influence or what type of leading are you going to be able to do with those people? You're just not. So what a great point you made there. And I just had to highlight something that was kind of funny, but also bring up a little bit something more about it.
Yeah. You never know. Like it's a small world. And depending on the industry that you're in, it could be an even smaller world.
Oh yeah.
Like in the company I'm at, Black Canyon, we have and a platform of companies in the outdoor space. And the outdoor space is a pretty small industry, right? You may not think about it from the outside, but it is so common to have a conversation with this person, and it really is like the 6 degrees of separation. And I would argue that that's probably holds true in a lot more industries than people even think about. So the whole idea of leading up the chain or across an organization, you've got to have some like forward thinking about that as well. Because, yeah, you may not work in the same company as someone, but are your paths going to cross? If you're a CPA and you work in a certain city, what are the chances that you might cross paths with that other CPA that you worked with 5 years ago, 10 years ago? They're going to remember you, and they're going to remember if you were a jerk. They're going to remember if you're a good guy. They're going to remember if you're the kind of person who just rolls up their sleeves and gets things done. Your reputation matters when you're trying to lead up the chain of command.
Well, let's just shift that, because reputation is everything. But if you don't have selfish motivations to do the things that you're doing, and you just shift your way of thinking to just being a helpful person. Don't be that guy that says, "Oh, that's not my job," or whatever the case. Instead of saying it's not my job, point people to the person who it is their job. Don't say it's not my job. That actually takes away your credibility immediately. Be the helpful person. If you can't do something physically, or if it's not something you're supposed to be doing, or it's not your job, or whatever the case may be, do everything you can to help that person and get them where they need to go, even if it's not in your business as a whole, so that you are just, I don't really know how to say it, but just don't be a jerk about stuff. Be helpful.
Yep.
If you want to serve people and that comes off in the way that you speak and the way that you act, people are going to notice that. And if you're looking for credibility, but you don't actually care about it, but you're that helpful person, your credibility is going to raise through the roof.
Yep.
And so just be helpful. My goodness, leading up and down the chain of command, leading across industries, being that voice about a topic, or being known for what you do, it all comes down to how good of a person you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too about leading up is the people that do that most effectively are conscious about solving problems for the people above them in the chain of command. So, number one, they never bring you a problem without also bringing the solution, right? We've talked before about the 1-3-1 approach to that. So, the people who are most effective at leading up the chain come to you and say, "Hey, JJ, this is the issue that we're facing. These are the 3 potential go forwards that I've identified. Of these 3, this is the one that I think is going to work best. What do you think? Any feedback from you before I start to execute?" Boom, done. But then the other thing is the proactive problem solving, right? It may not be a live issue, but when you can spot something that's coming down the pipe and then have that conversation with the person above you or a peer, right? Maybe this affects the marketing department, but you're in the operations and production department. You see something that happened down here that may affect marketing, relationship building, go talk to the marketing person who's on your same level, or go talk to your boss, because, hey, this may not be at our doorstep now, but it's 100 yards away, and let's get in front of it. That proactive problem solving for other people not only increases your credibility, but it makes your influence that much stronger.
Yeah. I think we should take that one step further too. And, showing humility. What if you don't have a solution and you are just stuck? Well, if you have that peer, or another person who maybe not even be your peer, just in another section, who has that certain level of experience, leverage that person. and maybe you can have a planning conversation. But if you don't know of anybody else who'd be willing to help with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, and a lot of people don't do this because they have that fear of being looked at as a dirtbag or whatever the case may be. But go to your boss. There's nothing wrong with that. Hey, boss, we have this issue coming up, in the next week or two. And, we've talked about it as a team. And I'm just going to be honest with you. We know that you have extensive experience with this. And I just thought it would be worthwhile for either me and you to be able to talk this out and come up with some potential solutions that I can bring back to the team, or maybe would you be willing to come down and do a planning session with us? That is also, don't make a habit of getting him involved in all that, him or her involved in all that stuff. But what a credibility builder. You did a couple things there. You showed humility. You went up to them and said, we tried, we couldn't figure it out, but we have to come up with a solution. But you also said, I recognize that you have expertise in this area. I need help.
Right.
And who's going to say no to that? There are people. There are people. Yes. But most people would say, well, dang, you told me you gave it your best shot. If you didn't come up with a solution, I don't know if I'll be able to do any better, but let's talk this through. Most people would do that. And that's also a credibility builder. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. If you've done everything you can to come up with a solution for something, people actually appreciate it when you ask them for help. People want to be seen. They want to be heard, but they also want to be appreciated. And that's one way to show your boss that you appreciate him, or show somebody else at work that you appreciate them, is to recognize that they're doing something extremely well and that you value them for their experience.
Yep. I had a really interesting conversation with someone, it was probably a month ago now, and we were talking about vulnerability.
Oh, yeah.
And what he said to me was, it was looking at it in a way that I've never thought about it before, along these same lines of, like, people want to help other people. But he said, being vulnerable is sometimes a gift to other people. So when you can open up and be transparent and say, hey, look, I'm struggling with this. I've tried these things, or like, I'm out of my depth here, but I know that you're an expert. Can you help me? Like, yeah, people want to help in a genuine way. If you ask in a genuine way, let me put it that way. It's not that you're dropping all your problems on people, but when you come to someone in those instances, the chances of them saying yes and providing valuable advice or guidance is probably 9 out of 10 times.
9 out of 10. Well, but let's also be clear about something. If that's your go-to, it's not a good idea.
No.
You have to do the work. And so if you're talking to your peer, you don't necessarily have to give the backstory as much as you would if you're talking to your boss or your boss's boss or whatever the case may be. And I would definitely, if you're going to go over your boss's head, make sure you have that conversation with your boss and say, I know that Joe up at the VP, he has experience doing this, and I would really love it if I could talk to him about something. But, make sure whoever it is above you that you're talking to, that you make sure that they know that you've already put in the work. Maybe even come up with a couple points that you talked about with your team, or whoever you did the planning with, or whoever you problem solved with, or whatever the case may be, so that they know that you're not just pushing the easy button. And because, I wouldn't normally say this, but just think about this, man. They write your evaluation. Do you really want them to think you're incompetent? You don't. So let them know that you've been doing the work, because at the end of the day, there's something to that as well. But if you normally don't come to them with things, and you come out of the blue and say, we tried to talk through this, could you help me? They're going to say yes.
Yeah. And if they don't, let me just put it this way. If you're that kind of person who just gets it done, who figures it out, and it's a 1 in 50 times you come to your boss with something that you genuinely need their help with, or you're looking for their advice. And if they don't help you out in that one of 50 times, you probably have a culture problem.
Mm-hmm.
And you should probably be thinking about what your next step is in your career.
Yes, I agree. I would like to, because we have just a few minutes left here, Chris, I would like to shift the conversation to friction.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's also, a credibility killer. I would say that every team in almost every industry is probably busy, and that's a given.
Yep.
When you are, especially newer managers struggle with this probably more than the seasoned ones, but even some of the seasoned ones, they still haven't gotten this right. But when something else comes down the pipeline that's not in the scope of your normal day-to-day stuff, and you get tasked with it for your team, be very careful with what kind of friction that you put out there, if any at all. I would say that you don't just take everything, because you're going to kill the culture of your team if you just overwhelm the crap out of them. But really think it through and have those conversations with your boss, or, I mean, there are many different types of work dynamics, and whether it's coming from the staff section or however that works, if it's getting passed down to you, wherever it's coming from, be careful how you cause friction with that. If I would say that turning down those additional things should be the exception and not the rule. I would be very careful with ever saying no to most things, just because you're part of the team. And I'm sure the stuff that you don't know that's happening behind the scenes is happening, and that's that they probably considered many things before they passed that task to you, and kicking it back, whether you have a good reason or not, is probably going to cause a lot more systematic issues than you realize, because most companies, unless of course there's a culture issue or whatever the case may be, or you have the type of company that they're high performing teams, they just give all the work to. That does happen as well, and that's still kind of a culture. It's a leadership issue, not necessarily a culture issue. But if most companies, they do split the work pretty well. They try to anyway. They have conversations around it. You can still say that this is something that we absolutely cannot accomplish, but I would say that make that the exception and not the rule, as I said. And I don't know what's your opinion on that, because I'm sure you deal with this often.
Sure. And my opinion is that comes back to the curious questions. So if you're a team lead and you get, something coming down from your director or VP, whoever your boss is, and they say, Hey, JJ, I really want your team to take this over. And that, like, that's not in our wheelhouse. That's not what we specialize in, whatever. When you ask those curious questions in a way that's like earnest. Okay, hey, you know what, boss? All right. I want to make sure that I'm clear on what the objective is here, what we're trying to achieve. And then you start walking through that stuff. One of two things is going to happen. Either number one, you're just going to gain the clarity that you need to be able to execute and like march forward. Or number two, through those questions and talking it through with the person who's trying to like jam it onto your team, they're going to realize like, oh, wait, this isn't the team to do this. There is someone else that should be doing this. You're not pushing back and saying like, hey man, that's not my job. This isn't what our team does. You're just creating a conversation through questions that maybe helps them see it through a different lens that they didn't think about, because they're like, oh, these are the high performers. We could just freaking bury them with everything. All right, start pushing back like, okay, hey, yeah, we can go clean out that empty warehouse. No problem. But does it make sense to pull our people off of these projects that are making us money or doing X, Y, and Z to have us pushing brooms? Maybe not. So Yeah. Asking the right questions without just overtly saying, no, not our job, not in our wheelhouse. That's when you look like a jerk. But you look like you're being thoughtful and understanding when you ask the right questions.
Well, and I'm going to be honest with you. I've run into situations like that, even since I've gotten out of the military, where you ask the questions and people get super frustrated with you.
Sure.
And you got to be careful with that. But on the other side of that, who cares if people get frustrated with you? Sometimes you have to ask those questions to make sure that you don't go off and do something that's completely opposite of what they want you to do. But You're right. There are times where they'll be like, oh, this should go to another team, or, oh, maybe we should split some manning and pull people from this team, that team, this team, and this team. And we should just create like a miniature task force to make this happen and then send them all back to where they belong after it's done. I mean, all of those things happen. Make sure you're asking questions, though. My goodness. It'll either clarify that you're the right people for the job, clarify you're the wrong people for the job, or clarify that plan was not really well thought out to begin with. And they might kick it back to the people that put that plan together. So questions are always very, very good. But let's wrap it up because we're at 31 minutes here. Chris, what kind of closing comments do you have? And then I'll throw mine in there.
Yeah, the closing comment is, if you are in a position to be able to influence and lead up the chain of command, don't be afraid to do it in a way that is genuine. Take that initiative, ask the questions, be a problem solver, and support your peers, because you never know what the future holds.
Yeah, agreed. And I would add to that, and something that we haven't even said thus far, no matter where you sit in a company, if you are helpful and you try to do the right thing by supporting other people, but also getting your job done on a regular basis, you're already leading. Mm-hmm. You're already leading. And then everything else that we said throughout the course of this episode, it applies directly to that. You could be all the way at the bottom. You could be at the middle with a boss and employees, or you could be close to the top and have all of multiple teams there. And these concepts actually work for all of that. Just make sure you watch through this episode. And what I'm going to add to all of that is the same thing I say at the end of every episode. Make sure you put a comment below if you have a question about it.
That's right.
Or send me a private message. I love that. And if you want to talk to Chris about it, I'm happy to make the connection. As long as you guys have a solution, that's really all we care about. But we should have said this at the beginning. This is a pre-recorded live. Mm-hmm. So if we did not get to your questions, make sure you still put them below, because we're gonna try to answer them in the best way possible. But don't forget to like this episode. Make sure you subscribe if you want to hear more. Make sure you share it if you think somebody else needs to know about it. But the comments, that's the bread and butter of where we kind of help people. That we don't always get a ton of comments that we don't answer while we're live, because usually we go live, not pre-recorded live. Mm-hmm. But this is a pre-recorded, so make sure you leave that comment so we get back to it.
Yeah, so let's keep it in the context of this episode, JJ. What we're asking our viewers for is to lead up and help us out.
Lead us and help us out. That's and also, right. if you have a topic that you want to hear, leave that in the comments as well. Next episode, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics. We've done it, I think, maybe a couple times in the past since we've started doing this, but it's decentralized leadership.
Yes.
And if you want to enhance your influence, enhance your up and down leadership, you can practice in any organization decentralized leadership.
That's right.
If that interests you, make sure you tune in next time. Thank you, everybody, for being here, watching it live and watching it later. And